23 noble brides fled screaming from King Kyle Vortigern, not because he was cruel, but because his power was so absolute it terrified them into madness. They called him monster, beast, the alpha too dangerous to claim. But on the night a broken Omega girl stumbled bleeding into his courtyard, hunted like an animal, and moments from death, the man everyone feared did something no one expected. He knelt beside her in the rain and whispered, "You're safe now." What happens next will shatter a kingdom, and prove that the most dangerous thing about Kyle Vortigern was never his rage. It was his restraint. Stay until the end to see how a girl with nothing rewrites the fate of an empire. Hit that like button and drop your city in the comments. Let's see where this story finds you. The storm hit Blackthorn Vale like a fist. Rain hammered the slate roofs of the fortress city, turning cobblestone streets into rushing rivers. Thunder cracked so loud it rattled the iron gates, and lightning split the sky in jagged white scars. Inside the royal palace, servants pressed themselves against stone walls, waiting for it to pass. Storms in the Vale didn't ask permission. They took what they wanted. King Kyle Vortigern stood alone in his private courtyard, rain soaking through his shirt, and didn't move. He'd stopped feeling the cold years ago. Stopped feeling much of anything, really. That's what happened when you were built like a weapon and raised to act like one. At 31, Kyle was exactly what the kingdom needed him to be. 6'4" of controlled violence, silver eyes that could strip a man's courage with a glance, and a presence so overwhelming that grown warriors had been known to step back when he entered a room. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. When Kyle Vortigern gave an order, the air itself seemed to obey, which made it all the more humiliating that he couldn't keep a wife. 23. 23 noble brides had been brought to Blackthorn Vale. 23 alliances carefully arranged by the council, each woman vetted, prepared, and presented like an offering to a god. And 23 times they'd taken one look at him, really looked, and broken. Some lasted a week, others a single night. The worst was Lady Seraphine of House Greymore, who'd made it all the way to the wedding feast before locking herself in the tower and refusing to come down. Her father had to drag her out screaming. "He's too much," she'd sobbed into her father's chest while half the court pretended not to listen. "I can't. He's too much, father, please." Kyle had stood there in his formal armor, expression blank, and watched her leave. Just like all the others. The council called it a crisis. Kyle called it confirmation. He wasn't meant to be loved. He was meant to be feared, and he'd done that job perfectly. The rain came down harder. Kyle tilted his head back, letting it run down his face, and wondered, not for the first time, if this was all there was. Conquest, duty, an empty throne and a kingdom that needed him but couldn't stand to be near him. That's when he heard it. A crash. Metal scraping stone. Then a sound that didn't belong in his courtyard at all, a choked, desperate gasp for air. Kyle turned. At first, he thought the storm had blown debris through the gate. Then the debris moved, and he realized it was a person, a girl. She'd collapsed halfway across the courtyard, one hand reaching toward the far wall like she thought she could claw her way to safety. Her dress, if you could call it that, was torn to rags. Blood ran from a gash across her shoulder, mixing with the rain. Her hair, matted and dark, stuck to her face in wet tangles. She wasn't supposed to be here. No one came to the king's private courtyard without permission. Ever. Kyle's hand went to the sword at his hip. Then the girl turned her head, and their eyes met. Hers were amber, wide, terrified, but not of him. She was looking past him, toward the gate she'd just come through, and the fear in her expression wasn't the same polite terror he usually saw. This was raw. Animal. The kind of fear that said if she didn't move, she was dead. Kyle heard them before he saw them. Boots, heavy and fast, voices shouting orders in the rain. She went this way. Check the alleys. Find her before Lord Kane realizes she's gone. The girl tried to stand. Her legs buckled. She went down hard on the wet stone, biting back a cry, and Kyle saw the iron cuff around her left ankle, the kind traffickers used, the kind that marked someone as property. Oh. He understood now. The men burst through the courtyard gate a second later, 4 of them, armed and soaked, clearly not palace guards. Mercenaries. Probably. Hunters. The kind of scum that ran human cargo through the borderlands and called it trade. They froze when they saw Kael, but only for a moment. Then the leader, a scarred man with a face like a rotting tree stump, stepped forward and forced something close to a bow. Your Majesty. His voice was oil over gravel. Apologies for the intrusion. We're retrieving stolen property. Won't take but a moment. Kael said nothing. The girl, Property, they'd called her, was staring at him now. She'd dragged herself halfway behind a stone bench, like that would somehow protect her, and her breath came in short, ragged pulls. Waiting. Expecting him to hand her over. Why wouldn't she? Kings didn't intervene in business disputes, especially not over omegas. The scarred man stepped closer. She belongs to Lord Cain Dravius. Ran off during transport. You know how they get wild little things, omegas. No sense of discipline. He smiled, showing teeth gone gray at the roots. We'll have her out of your courtyard in no time, Majesty. Just need your leave to— No. The word came out cold and flat, and the temperature in the courtyard seemed to drop 10 degrees. The scarred man blinked. I'm sorry, Majesty, I don't think I— You heard me. Kael took a single step forward, and all four men stepped back. Good. They had survival instincts. You're trespassing in the royal wing. You have 3 seconds to leave before I decide you're a threat. Now, wait just a— 3. The scarred man's face went red. This is legal merchandise, Your Majesty, documented, and— 2. She's an omega. Kael's hand moved to his sword, not drawing it, just resting there. The meaning was clear. The scarred man swore under his breath, shot the girl a look that promised consequences, and jerked his head toward the gate. Come on. We'll take this up with the council. They left, fast. The courtyard went quiet except for the rain. Kael turned. The girl hadn't moved. She was still half hidden behind the bench, staring at him like he'd just sprouted wings. Her whole body shook, cold, shock, probably both. But she didn't run, didn't speak. Just watched him with those wide amber eyes, waiting for the trap to spring. He crouched down slowly, the way you would near a wounded animal. You're bleeding, he said. She flinched, didn't answer. Kael kept his voice low, steady, the same tone he used with skittish horses. I'm not going to hurt you, but you need a physician. That shoulder won't heal on its own. Still nothing, just shallow breathing and rain. He could smell her now, beneath the blood and mud and fear. There was something else. Lavender and smoke. The scent of an omega, faint but unmistakable. It stirred something old and uncomfortable in his chest, something he'd learned to bury years ago. Focus. Can you stand? He asked. She shook her head, barely. Kael exhaled slowly. I'm going to pick you up. If you want me to stop, say so. He didn't wait for permission. He slid one arm beneath her knees, the other behind her shoulders, and lifted. She weighed almost nothing. He could feel every bone, every tremble. When was the last time she'd eaten? She didn't fight, didn't scream, just curled into his chest, shaking harder, and whispered something so quiet he almost missed it. Please don't send me back. Kael looked down at her. Rain dripped from his hair onto her forehead. Her eyes were screwed shut now, bracing for a blow that wasn't coming. I won't, he said, and he meant it. He carried her inside. The royal physician, an old woman named Mira, who'd been patching up Vortigern kings for 40 years, took one look at the girl in Kael's arms and swore. What in the frozen hell happened to her? Traffickers, Kael said. Fix her. Mira didn't argue. She pointed toward the private sitting room off Kael's chambers, neutral ground away from prying eyes, and started barking orders at a servant to bring water, bandages, and something for the pain. Kael laid the girl down on the couch as carefully as he could. She still hadn't opened her eyes. Mira shooed him toward the door. Out. I work better without an audience. I'm staying. Your Majesty. I'm staying. Mira muttered something about stubborn alphas and got to work. Kael stood by the window, arms crossed, and watched the rain. He could hear Mira cleaning the wound, the girl's sharp inhales when it hurt. She didn't cry out, didn't complain, just endured. She's malnourished, Mira said after a while, her voice tight with anger. Dehydrated. This shoulder wound is infected, probably a few days old.
And these bruises, she paused. Someone's been hitting her, regularly. Kael's jaw tightened. He didn't turn around. Can you fix her? The body, yes. The rest? Mira sighed. That's not my field, Majesty. An hour later, the girl was cleaned, stitched, and sleeping.
Mira had given her something to knock her out. She needs rest more than anything, and left with a promise to return in the morning. Kael dismissed the servants, locked the door, and stood over the couch, studying her. She looked younger now, 18, maybe 19. Her face, scrubbed free of blood and dirt, had good bones. Delicate, but strong. The kind of face that would have been beautiful if life hadn't beaten it into something wary and closed off. Even unconscious, her hands were curled into fists. He pulled a chair over and sat. This was a mistake. He knew that. Sheltering a runaway Omega without documentation, without council approval, it was going to cause problems. Big ones. Lord Cain Dravius was a name he recognized. Minor nobility, but connected. The kind of man who traded in flesh and called it enterprise. If Kael refused to return her, Dravius would escalate. The council would get involved. They'd call it overreach, sentiment, weakness. And maybe they'd be right. Kael had spent his entire reign proving he wasn't controlled by instinct, that he was more than biology, more than the alpha impulses that told him to dominate, to claim, to conquer. He'd built his authority on discipline, on restraint, on being the cold, rational force the kingdom needed. So why had he done this? He looked at her again, at the bandage on her shoulder. The iron cuff still locked around her ankle, the way her breathing hitched even in sleep, like she was bracing for the next blow. Because she'd asked, "Please don't send me back." And he'd heard her. Outside, the storm was starting to break. The rain softened to a steady patter. Thunder rumbled in the distance, moving east. Kyle leaned back in the chair and closed his eyes. He'd deal with the council in the morning. She woke up fighting. 1 second, Kael was half dozing in the chair. The next, she was on her feet, or trying to be, gasping and swinging at shadows. He caught her wrist before she could tear the stitches. "Stop. You're safe." She didn't hear him. Her eyes were open but unfocused, locked on some invisible threat. Panic attack. He'd seen them before in soldiers fresh from the front. "Look at me," he said, keeping his voice firm but not harsh. "You're in the palace. You're safe. No one's going to hurt you." It took a few seconds, but she finally focused on his face. Recognition flickered, then confusion. You didn't..." She looked around wildly, taking in the sitting room, the locked door, the bandage on her shoulder. "Why didn't you send me back?" "Because you asked me not to." She stared at him like he'd just spoken a foreign language. Kael let go of her wrists and stepped back, giving her space. "Sit down before you fall down." She didn't sit. She swayed, grabbed the back of the couch for balance, and kept staring. "Who are you?" "Kael Vortigern." Her face went pale. "The king." "Yes, the..." She swallowed hard. They said "A monster," Kael finished. "I know what they say." She looked like she wanted to run. He didn't blame her. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated. "Lyra?" "Lyra." He tested the name. It fit. "Are you hungry?" What?" "It's a simple question. When did you last eat?" She blinked, looked away. "I don't." 2 days, maybe. I'm not sure." Kael walked to the door, unlocked it, and called for a servant. "Bring food, enough for 2, and water." He shut the door again and turned back to find Lyra still standing there, looking lost. "Sit," he said again, gentler this time. She sat, barely, perched on the edge of the couch like she might need to bolt. Kael took the chair across from her. "You ran from Lord Dravius." It wasn't a question, but she nodded anyway. "How long were you with him?" 6 months. Her voice was flat, distant. "He bought me in Greyhaven, said I'd work in his estate. That was a lie." Kael's hands curled into fists. He forced them to relax. "What did he do?" "What do you think he did?" She looked up and there was something sharp in her eyes now, bitter. I'm an Omega. No family, no name, no protection. Men like Dravius don't buy girls like me to pour tea. The silence stretched. I'm sorry, Kael said. Lyra laughed. It was a hard, ugly sound. You're sorry. The King of Blackthorn Vale is sorry. She shook her head. You're going to send me back anyway. Why pretend you care? I'm not sending you back. You have to. He has papers. A bill of sale. It's legal. I don't care if it's legal. Kael leaned forward, holding her gaze. You're under my protection now. That means Lord Dravius can file all the complaints he wants. He's not getting you back. She stared at him, really stared, like she was trying to find the trick, the catch. Why? She whispered. Kael didn't have a good answer for that, not one that made sense anyway. So he told her the truth. Because I could. The food arrived before she could respond. A servant brought in bread, cheese, roasted meat, and a pitcher of water. Kael watched Lyra try to eat slowly and fail. She tore into the food like she hadn't seen a meal in weeks, which, based on how thin she was, might not be far from the truth. He didn't comment, just let her eat. When she finally slowed down, she looked up and caught him watching. Sorry, she muttered. I know that was... Don't apologize. She wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. What happens now? Now you rest. In the morning, I'll deal with the council. They're going to tell you to return me. Probably. And you'll refuse. Yes. Lyra set down the bread. Her hands were shaking again. You don't understand. Dravius isn't just some merchant. He's connected. He supplies half the noble houses in the Vale with people like me. If you cross him, then I cross him. Kael stood. You should sleep. Mira will check on you in the morning. Where will I sleep? Here. This room is warded. No one comes in without my permission. Where will you... The next room over. He gestured toward a connecting door. If you need anything, knock. She looked around the sitting room, at the locked door, the soft furniture, the fireplace, and something in her expression cracked. Just a little. I don't understand you, she said quietly. Kael paused at the door. You don't have to. He left her there and went to his own chambers, where he stood by the window and watched the last of the storm blow itself out over the mountains. Tomorrow, the council would come for him. Let them. Morning broke cold and gray. Kael was awake before dawn. He always was, and spent an hour in the training yard working through sword drills. Physical exertion helped, cleared his head, gave him something to focus on that wasn't the impossible situation he'd just created. When he came back inside, Lyra was awake. She'd somehow found a servant's dress, plain, gray, too big for her, and was sitting by the window with her knees pulled to her chest. She looked up when he entered. Mira came by, she said. Changed the bandage, said I'm healing. Good. She also said the council's been summoned. Lyra's voice was carefully neutral. Because of me. Kael crossed to the wash basin and started scrubbing the training sweat off his arms. They were always going to be summoned. What are you going to tell them? The truth, that you're staying. They'll think you're insane. They already think that. He dried his hands and turned to face her. Lyra, I need to know something. If I give you money, supplies, a horse, if I help you disappear, would you run? She went very still. Are you offering? I'm asking. She looked down at her hands. Where would I go? I'm marked. She touched the iron cuff still locked around her ankle. This thing has Dravius's seal on it. Any guard in the Vale would send me back, and even if I made it to the border, she trailed off. There's nowhere safe for girls like me. Not really. Kael walked over and knelt in front of her. Give me your ankle. She hesitated, then extended her leg. He pulled a small tool from his belt, something he'd taken from the armory that morning, and wedged it into the cuff's lock. 2 seconds of pressure, and the iron popped open. He pulled it off and tossed it into the fireplace. Lyra stared at her bare ankle like it belonged to someone else. "You're not marked anymore," Kael said. "And you're not running. You're staying here, under my protection, until we figure out what comes next. They're going to fight you on this. Let them." A knock at the door, sharp, impatient. Kael stood. "That'll be them." He opened the door to find Lord Malrek Vortigern, his cousin, head of the council, and the most ambitious pain in the ass Kael had ever had the misfortune of being related to. Malrek was 10 years older, softer in the middle, and had a politician's smile that never reached his eyes. "Cousin," Malrek said smoothly, "we need to talk." "Then talk." "Not here." Malrek's gaze flicked past Kyle toward Lyra, who'd gone very still by the window. "In the council chamber. Now." Kael didn't move. "Anything you need to say, you can say in front of her." Malrek's smile tightened. "Very well. The council has received a formal complaint from Lord Dravius regarding stolen property currently being harbored in the royal wing. He's demanding immediate return of said property and compensation for damages." He paused. "I assume you know what I'm talking about." "I do." "And?" "And I'm refusing." Malrek's expression didn't change, but something cold flashed in his eyes. "On what grounds?" "On the grounds that she asked for my protection, and I gave it." "She's an Omega, Kael, documented property. You can't just—" "I'm the king," Kael said quietly. "I can do exactly that." The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush stone. Malrek glanced at Lyra again. "Does she have a name?" "Lyra Hale," Lyra said before Kael could answer. Her voice was steady, but her hands were clenched in her lap. "And I'm not property, not anymore." Malrek's smile returned, sharper this time. Brave words for someone with no legal standing. He turned back to Kael. "The council is waiting. I suggest you reconsider your position before this becomes complicated. Tell the council I'll be there within the hour." Malrek's jaw tightened. "Don't make this a fight you can't win, cousin." "I've never lost a fight yet." Malrek left. Kael shut the door and turned to find Lyra standing now, arms wrapped around herself. "He's going to destroy you for this," she said. "He's going to try." "Why are you doing this? You don't even know me." Kael looked at her, really looked, and saw the same question he'd been asking himself all night. Why? What was it about this girl that made him willing to burn bridges he'd spent years building? Then he remembered the way she'd looked at him in the rain, not with fear of what he was, but with hope for what he might do. "Because someone should," he said, and he walked out to face the council. The council chamber smelled like old wood and older grudges. Kael pushed through the heavy oak doors and found them already seated. 12 lords and ladies arranged in a horseshoe around a table that had witnessed 100 years of kingdom politics. Malrek sat at the far end, fingers steepled, wearing an expression that said he'd already won. The others watched Kael with varying degrees of calculation. Some sympathetic, most not. He didn't sit. Standing gave him the advantage. "Let's get this over with," Kael said. Malrek gestured to an empty chair like a gracious host. "Please, cousin, we're all friends here." "No, we're not. Say what you came to say." A woman in silver robes, Lady Corinth, Minister of Trade, cleared her throat. "Your Majesty, we understand you've taken in a person of disputed ownership. Lord Dravius has filed—" "I know what he filed," Kael interrupted. "And the answer is no." Lord Garrett, an aging military commander with a face like weathered granite, leaned forward. "With respect, Majesty, this isn't a matter of personal preference. Dravius has legal documentation. A bill of sale signed by the magistrate in Greyhaven. The girl is registered property under Vale law." "She's not property, not anymore." "You can't just declare that," Corinth said, frustration creeping into her voice. "There are protocols, legal frameworks. If you start ignoring—" "I'm not ignoring anything. I'm exercising royal prerogative." Malrek smiled. "And which prerogative would that be exactly?" "The one that says I decide who gets protection in this kingdom." Protection. Malrek tasted the word like spoiled wine. Interesting choice of words. Tell me, cousin, is this protection or something else? The implication hung in the air like smoke.
Kael went very still. Careful. I'm merely asking, Malrek continued, voice smooth as silk, whether your judgment might be clouded. She is an omega, after all, and you are an alpha.
Biology has a way of complicating rational thought. The temperature in the room dropped. Kael took 3 steps forward. Not fast. Deliberate. The kind of movement that made predators pause and prey scatter. He stopped at the edge of the table, hands flat on the wood, and looked directly at Malrek. Say that again? Malrek didn't flinch, but his smile faded. I'm simply stating facts. 23 brides have rejected you because of your intensity. Now suddenly you're harboring a runaway omega and refusing to follow established law. One might wonder if what? Kael's voice was quiet, deadly. If I'm being controlled by instinct? If I'm too weak to think clearly? Is that what you're saying? I'm saying, Malrek replied carefully, that the optics are problematic. I don't care about optics. You should. Lady Corinth spoke up again. Your Majesty, Lord Dravius is threatening to take this to the High Court. If he does, and they rule in his favor, you'll be forced to comply. It'll make you look weak. Or, Lord Garrett added quietly, you could return the girl now, issue a formal apology, and avoid the entire mess. Dravius might even accept compensation in lieu of no. The word echoed off stone walls. Kael straightened. Lyra Hale stays. She's under royal protection. That's final. This is madness, Corinth said. You're risking political capital over one omega. Over one person, Kael corrected, who asked for help. And I gave it. Noble, Malrek murmured. But nobility doesn't feed a kingdom. Dravius supplies labor to half the noble houses in the Vale. If you alienate him, those houses will turn on you. You'll fracture the council. And for what? A girl with no name, no family, no value? Kael's hand slammed down on the table so hard a crack spidered through the wood. Everyone flinched. Her name, Kael said, voice low and controlled, is Lyra Hale. And her value isn't determined by who owns her. Now I'm going to ask once, does anyone here have a legitimate legal argument for why I can't grant her protection? Not politics, not optics, law. Silence. Lord Garrett shifted in his seat. Technically, no. Royal prerogative does allow for sheltering individuals seeking asylum. It's archaic, rarely used, but it's still valid. Then we're done here. Not quite. Malrek stood. Even if you have the legal authority, Kael, you're still making a mistake. Dravius won't let this go. He'll escalate, rally the other lords, turn this into a referendum on your leadership, and eventually, he paused, letting the words land. You'll have to choose between the girl and the kingdom. Then I guess we'll see which one I pick. Kael walked out before anyone could respond. The corridor outside was empty except for 2 guards who snapped to attention as he passed. He ignored them. His mind was already 3 moves ahead, calculating. Malrek was right about one thing. Dravius would escalate. Men like him always did, which meant Kael needed to move faster. He found Lyra exactly where he'd left her, still sitting by the window in the oversized servant's dress. She looked up when he entered, and he saw the question in her eyes before she asked it. How bad? Bad enough. He crossed to the sideboard and poured himself water, drank it in one go. The council wants me to return you. I refused. And? And now we wait to see who blinks first. Lyra stood slowly, favoring her injured shoulder. You can't win this. Dravius has the law on his side. Law isn't the same as right. No, but it's what people follow. She walked toward him, movements careful and measured. I appreciate what you're trying to do, really, but you're putting yourself at risk for someone who's not worth it. Kael set down the cup. Don't do that. Do what? Diminish yourself. You asked for protection. I gave it. That makes you worth it. She studied him like he was a puzzle she couldn't solve. You don't even know me. I could be dangerous, a spy, a liar, anything. Are you? No, but then it doesn't matter. He moved to the window, looking out over the city below. Blackthorn Vale sprawled across the valley like spilled iron, all sharp angles and smoke. My whole life, people have been afraid of me, what I am, what I could do. And I've spent years proving I'm more than that, more than just instinct and violence. He glanced back at her. But sometimes I wonder if they're right. If all I'll ever be is the thing they're afraid of. Lyra was quiet for a moment. Then, "You're not what they say." "How would you know?" "Because," she said simply, "if you were, I'd be dead already, or worse." The truth of it sat between them like a third presence. Kyle turned away from the window. "You need better clothes. Can't have you walking around in a dress 3 sizes too big." "I don't have money for—" "I'll handle it. Mira knows a seamstress, discreet." He paused. "And you'll need quarters, somewhere more permanent than my sitting room." Lyra's expression shifted, guarded. "Are you trying to get rid of me?" "I'm trying to keep you alive. Staying in the royal wing makes you a target. You need your own space, somewhere defendable." "So I'm a prisoner now?" "You're protected." "There's a difference." She crossed her arms, wincing slightly from the shoulder wound. "And if I want to leave, then you leave. I'm not keeping you here by force, Lyra, but if you walk out that door without protection, Dravius's men will have you in chains before nightfall. So I have no choice. You always have a choice. It's just that some choices get you killed." She looked away, jaw tight. "I hate this, being helpless, dependent." "Then don't be." Kael moved toward the door. "Learn to fight. Learn the castle. Learn who your enemies are. I'll give you the tools. What you do with them is up to you." "Why are you helping me?" He stopped, hand on the door. "Because someone should have helped you a long time ago, and they didn't." Before she could respond, he left. 3 days passed like a held breath. Kael threw himself into state business. Border disputes, trade negotiations, the endless bureaucracy of keeping a frontier kingdom from tearing itself apart. But no matter how busy he kept himself, part of his mind was always on Lyra, wondering if she was safe, if she was settling in, if she regretted asking for his help. Mira reported that she was healing well. The shoulder wound was closing clean, no infection. Physically, she'd recover. Emotionally, that was harder to measure. The seamstress delivered clothes on the second day, practical things, dresses and trousers that actually fit, boots that didn't fall off. Kael had them sent to Lyra's new quarters, a suite of rooms in the East Wing normally reserved for visiting dignitaries. Defensible, private, far enough from the council's prying eyes. He didn't visit her, didn't want to crowd her, didn't trust himself not to make things worse. On the 4th day, she found him. Kael was in the training yard running through sword drills with Captain Thorne, the head of his personal guard. It was early, barely dawn, and the air still held the night's chill. Thorne was a decade older than Kael and one of the few people who could actually challenge him in a fight. They'd been sparring for half an hour when Kael noticed her. She was standing at the edge of the yard, half hidden behind a stone pillar, watching. He lowered his sword. "We're done." Thorne followed his gaze and raised an eyebrow. "The Omega? Her name's Lyra." "Right, Lyra." Thorne wiped sweat from his face and grinned. "She's got guts, I'll give her that. Walking around the palace like she owns it. Half the servants are scandalized. Let them be scandalized." Thorne clapped him on the shoulder. "You're playing a dangerous game, Majesty." "I know." The captain left and Kael crossed the yard to where Lyra stood. She'd changed into one of the new outfits, dark trousers, a fitted tunic, boots that looked like they might actually stay on. Her hair was pulled back, and the bruises on her face had started to fade from purple to yellow. "You're up early," he said. "Couldn't sleep." She gestured toward the sword. "Can you teach me?" Kael blinked. "Teach you what?" "To fight. You said I should learn, so teach me." He studied her. "You sure? It's not easy." "Nothing in my life has been easy." Her amber eyes met his, unflinching. "If I'm going to survive here, I need to be able to defend myself." "Fair point." Kael walked to the weapons rack and selected a training blade, wooden, blunted, light enough for a beginner. He tossed it to her. She caught it awkwardly, nearly dropped it, then adjusted her grip. First lesson, he said. Stop holding it like it's going to bite you. She glared at him. I've never held a sword before. I can tell. He moved behind her, adjusting her stance. Feet shoulder-width apart, knees bent. You're not a statue. You need to move. She shifted, trying to mirror his position. Like this? Better. Now swing. She swung. The blade wobbled through the air like a drunk bird. Kael bit back a smile. Again. Put your weight into it. They worked for an hour. By the end, Lyra was sweating, breathing hard, and had managed to hit the training dummy exactly 3 times. Progress. You're terrible at this, Kael said. Thanks. That's encouraging. But you're trying. That's more than most people do. She leaned on the practice sword, catching her breath. How long did it take you to get good? Years, but I started when I was 6. Great, so I'll be competent by the time I'm 30. He laughed, actually laughed. It surprised both of them. Lyra stared at him. You should do that more often. Do what? Laugh, smile, act like a person instead of a... She trailed off. Monster? I was going to say statue, but sure. They fell into a routine after that. Every morning before dawn, Lyra showed up at the training yard. Kael taught her the basics: footwork, balance, how to read an opponent's movement. She was clumsy at first, all awkward angles and hesitation, but she learned fast. And more importantly, she didn't quit. The rest of the castle noticed. Servants whispered, guards exchanged looks, and the council, Malric especially, watched with thinly veiled disapproval. On the 8th day, Lady Corinth cornered Kael in the hallway outside the throne room. Your Majesty, a word? He stopped. Make it quick. It's about the girl, Lyra. People are talking. Let them talk. It's not that simple. Corinth lowered her voice. You're spending time with her, training her, eating meals with her. The council is starting to wonder if this is more than just protection. Kael's expression went cold. What the council wonders is none of my concern. It should be. If they think you're being influenced, I'm not. By biology, by instinct, by whatever bond, there is no bond. The words came out sharper than he intended. I'm helping her because it's the right thing to do. That's all. Corinth looked skeptical but backed off. Very well, Majesty. But be careful. Perception matters. And right now, the perception is that you're choosing an omega over your kingdom. She left before he could respond. That night, Kael found himself standing outside Lyra's quarters, hand raised to knock, then lowering it. What was he doing? Corinth was right. This was getting complicated, dangerous. He should pull back, put distance between them, let her settle into castle life without his constant presence. The door opened before he could leave. Lyra stood there in a simple nightdress, holding a candle. I heard you breathing out there. Were you planning to knock or just lurk? I was leaving. Clearly. She stepped aside. Come in before someone sees you loitering. Against his better judgment, he did. Her quarters were sparse but livable. She'd barely unpacked, a few books on the table, clothes folded neatly in a trunk. The bed looked like it hadn't been slept in. She noticed him looking. I can't sleep in it, she admitted. Too soft. I keep thinking it's a trap. It's not a trap. I know that logically, but my body doesn't believe me. She set the candle down. Why are you here, Kael? He didn't have a good answer. I wanted to check on you. I'm fine. You're not sleeping. Neither are you, apparently. Fair point. They stood in awkward silence for a moment. Then Lyra spoke. The council thinks we're bonding. Kael tensed. Who told you that? No one had to. I hear the servants talking, see the way people look at us. She crossed her arms. Are we? No. The word came out too fast. I'm helping you, that's all. Is it? He met her eyes. What do you want me to say? The truth. The truth. That he thought about her more than he should. That her scent, lavender and smoke, had started to feel familiar, comforting. That when she looked at him, she didn't see a monster. She saw him, and that scared him more than any battle ever had. But he didn't say any of that. "I'm not bonding with you," he said quietly. "I can't. Alphas like me. People are afraid of what we might become if we lose control. And bonding, it's the ultimate loss of control. So you're choosing not to feel anything. I'm choosing to protect you. There's a difference." Lyra stepped closer. "You know what I think? I think you're terrified, not of me, of yourself, of what it might mean to actually care about someone. You don't know what you're talking about, don't I?" Her voice was soft but relentless. "You've spent your whole life proving you're not a monster, but maybe the real test isn't whether you can control your power. Maybe it's whether you can control your fear." The words hit harder than any blade. Kael looked away. "I should go." "Running again?" "I'm not—" He stopped, exhaled. "You asked for the truth. Here it is. Every person who's ever gotten close to me has either run away or gotten hurt. I don't know how to do this, don't know how to be whatever you think I should be. So yes, I'm running, because it's safer than staying." He turned toward the door. Lyra's voice stopped him. "Kael," he paused. "Thank you. For everything. But you don't have to protect me from yourself. I'm not afraid of you." "You should be." "Why? Because you're an alpha? Because you're powerful?" She moved into his line of sight. "I've seen what real monsters look like, and you're not one of them." For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Then Kael did something reckless, something he'd sworn he wouldn't do. He reached out and touched her face, just briefly, his thumb brushing the fading bruise on her cheekbone. "Get some sleep," he said quietly, and left before he could make things worse. The summons came 2 days later. Kael was reviewing supply reports when Captain Thorne burst into his study, face grim. "We have a problem." Kael set down the papers. "What kind?" "Lord Dravius is here, at the palace gates, with 50 armed men and a writ from the High Court demanding Lyra's immediate return." Everything went very still. "When?" 10 minutes ago. He's demanding an audience. Now." Kael stood. "Where's Lyra?" "East Wing. I've posted extra guards." "Good. Keep her there. No one goes in or out without my direct order." "What are you going to do?" Kael buckled on his sword. "What I should have done from the beginning. End this." He found Dravius in the main courtyard, surrounded by armed thugs pretending to be soldiers. The man himself was exactly what Kael expected. Mid-40s, expensive clothes, the kind of face that smiled while planning your murder. He looked up when Kael approached, and his smile widened. "Your Majesty, how gracious of you to see me. You have 1 minute to state your business and leave." Dravius pulled out a rolled parchment. "I have a writ from the High Court. They've ruled in my favor. The Omega, Lyra Hale, is legally my property. You're hereby ordered to return her immediately." Kael took the parchment. Read it. Every word was legally binding. He handed it back. "No." Dravius blinked. "I'm sorry?" "I said no. The writ is void. You can't just declare a High Court ruling void. I can when it violates royal prerogative. Lyra requested asylum. I granted it. That supersedes any prior claim." Dravius's smile turned sharp. "And when the High Court overrules you, what then?" "Then I'll cross that bridge when I come to it." "You're making a mistake, Vortigern." Dravius stepped closer, lowering his voice so only Kael could hear. "I own half the council. My business keeps this kingdom running. Cross me, and I'll make sure your reign is very, very short." Kael looked at him, really looked, and saw nothing but ambition wrapped in expensive silk. "Get out of my palace," Kael said quietly, "and take your men with you. You have 30 seconds before I consider you a hostile force." Dravius's face went red. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is." For a moment, Kael thought Dravius might actually be stupid enough to push it. Then the man's survival instincts kicked in. He stepped back, gestured to his men, and turned toward the gate. But before leaving, he looked back one last time. She'll betray you, Dravius called out. That's what Omegas do. They find weakness and they exploit it. And when she does, when she breaks whatever pathetic bond you think you're forming, you'll wish you'd listened to me. Then he was gone. Kyle stood in the empty courtyard, fists clenched, trying to slow his breathing. The man's words shouldn't have landed, but they did, because part of him wondered if Dravius was right. That night, the council called an emergency session. Kyle walked in to find them already shouting, Malrek at the center, orchestrating the chaos like a conductor. Complete disregard for legal authority, setting a dangerous precedent. If we don't act now, the kingdom will... Enough. Kael's voice cut through the noise like a blade. Silence fell. Malrek spread his hands. Cousin, we're merely discussing the situation. No. You're plotting. Let's call it what it is. Very well. Malrek stood. Then let me be clear. You've backed yourself into a corner, Kael. Dravius has the law, the high court, the support of half the noble houses. And you have... what? An Omega with no name and a sense of misplaced chivalry? I have the crown. For now. Malrek let that hang, but crowns can be, reassigned, especially when the king proves himself unfit to lead. The threat was barely veiled. Kael walked slowly toward the head of the table. Are you suggesting a vote of no confidence? I'm suggesting, Malrek said carefully, that you reconsider your priorities, return the girl, issue an apology, move forward, or, he paused, face the consequences. And what consequences would those be? Before Malrek could answer, the doors burst open. Lyra stood there, flanked by two very confused guards who clearly had no idea how she'd gotten past them. She was dressed in one of her new outfits, hair pulled back, chin raised, and she looked furious. What are you doing here? Kael demanded. She ignored him, walked straight to the center of the council chamber and looked around at each lord and lady in turn. My name, she said clearly, is Lyra Hale, and I have something to say. Malrek recovered first. Guards, remove her. Let her speak. Kael's voice was iron. The chamber went silent. Lyra stood in the center of the room, every eye on her, and didn't flinch. Her hands were steady at her sides. Her voice, when she spoke, carried to every corner. You want to know why I ran from Lord Dravius? I'll tell you. He bought me in Greyhaven 6 months ago, told my handler I'd work in his estate. Cook, clean, simple labor. She paused. That was a lie. What he wanted was simpler than that, and worse. Lady Corinth shifted uncomfortably. This is hardly appropriate. No, what's not appropriate is selling human beings like livestock and pretending it's legal just because you wrote it on paper. Lyra's amber eyes swept the room. You all know what happens to Omegas in this kingdom. You just don't care because it doesn't happen to you. Lord Garrett cleared his throat. The system has been in place for generations. The system is broken. Lyra cut him off. And you know it. You just benefit too much to change it. Malrek stood slowly. You have no right to address this council. I have every right. I'm the one you're debating like I'm a piece of furniture. She turned to face him directly. You want to return me to Dravius because it's legal, because it keeps your precious order intact, because admitting the system is wrong would mean you've been wrong this whole time. And you can't have that, can you? You insolent! What? Lyra stepped forward. What am I? Property? Merchandise? Something to be traded and used and discarded? Her voice dropped. I'm a person, just like you. The only difference is you were born into power and I was born into chains. But that doesn't make you better. It just makes you luckier. The silence that followed was thick enough to drown in. Kael watched her stand there, small, wounded, facing down the most powerful people in the kingdom, and felt something shift in his chest. Not a bond. Nothing so simple. Just recognition. She wasn't backing down. Wasn't running. She was fighting the only way she could, with words, with truth. And it was magnificent. Malrek's face had gone red. This is absurd. Your Majesty, are you going to allow this creature to insult the council? She's not insulting you, Kael said quietly. She's telling you the truth. You just don't like hearing it. The truth? Malric laughed, but there was no humor in it. The truth is she's a runaway Omega trying to manipulate you, playing on your misplaced sense of honor, and you're falling for it. No. Lyra's voice was steel. The truth is you're afraid, all of you, afraid that if one Omega can stand up and say no, others might too, and then your whole rotten system falls apart. Lady Corinth stood abruptly. This has gone far enough. Your Majesty, I move that we take a formal vote. Either you return the girl to Lord Dravius, or we explore. Other options. Other options, Kael repeated. You mean removing me from the throne? If necessary. The words landed like stones in still water. Kael looked around the table, saw calculation in their eyes, fear, ambition. Malric had been working them, he realized, turning them against him, using Lyra as the excuse. This wasn't about law or order. It was a coup, slow, careful, but a coup nonetheless. And Lyra had just forced them to show their hand. Vote then, Kael said. Malric blinked. What? You want a formal vote? Take it. Right now. Let's see where everyone stands. Malric hesitated. He'd expected argument, resistance, not agreement. Very well. He looked around the table. All in favor of requiring His Majesty to return the Omega to Lord Dravius and issue a formal apology? 6 hands went up, half the council. Opposed? 5 hands, including Lord Garrett, which surprised Kael. Malric smiled. The motion passes. Your Majesty, you have until... The motion passes nothing. Kael interrupted. A tie isn't a majority, and even if it were, you're forgetting something important. What's that? I'm still the king, and I don't answer to you. Malric's smile faded. You can't ignore a council vote. I just did. Kael stood. This session is over. Everyone out. You're making a mistake. Out! The word echoed off stone walls like thunder. They left, slowly, reluctantly. Malric was the last to go, pausing at the door to deliver one final warning. This isn't finished, cousin. No, Kael agreed. It's not. The door closed. Kael turned to find Lyra still standing in the center of the room, trembling slightly. Not from fear, from adrenaline. That was either very brave or very stupid, he said. Probably both. She met his eyes. I'm sorry. I know you said to stay in my quarters. How did you get past the guards? Told them I needed to speak with you, that it was urgent. A ghost of a smile. They believed me. They shouldn't have, but they did, because no one expects an Omega to lie. The smile faded. That's the problem, isn't it? We're not supposed to have thoughts of our own, just exist, obey, disappear when we're inconvenient. Kael crossed the room slowly. What you just did, confronting the council like that, you made yourself a target. I was already a target. Not like this. Before they wanted to return you to Dravius. Now? He shook his head. Now they see you as a threat. Something that needs to be eliminated. Lyra lifted her chin. Good. Let them be afraid for once. He almost smiled. Almost. You don't know what you're saying. Don't I? I've spent my whole life being afraid of being hit, sold, used, thrown away. Her voice hardened. I'm done being afraid. If they want to come for me, let them come. At least I'll see them coming. Lyra, you asked me if I'd run, remember? And I said there was nowhere safe. She stepped closer. But maybe that's not the point. Maybe the point is to stop running, to stand and fight even when you know you'll lose, because at least then you lose on your own terms. Kael looked at her, really looked, and saw someone he recognized, someone who'd been pushed too far and decided to push back. Consequences be damned. Someone like him. Come on, he said. We need to get you somewhere secure. The East Wing isn't safe anymore, not after that performance. He headed for the door. There's a vault beneath the palace, old storage rooms. No one uses them except the archivists. You'll stay there until we figure out the next move. A vault? You're putting me in a vault? I'm keeping you alive. There's a difference. They made it 3 corridors before the attack came. It happened fast. Too fast. One moment they were alone. The next, 6 men in dark clothes dropped from the ceiling beams, blades already drawn, professional, coordinated. The kind of killers who didn't leave witnesses. Kael's sword was out before conscious thought. He caught the first blade on his guard, twisted, and opened the man's throat in one smooth motion. The second attacker came low. Kael kicked him in the chest, sent him flying backward into a wall, bone cracked. "Run!" he shouted to Lyra. She didn't run. She grabbed a fallen blade and tried to stab the third attacker in the leg. The technique was terrible, all the grace of her training yard sessions forgotten in panic, but it worked. The man stumbled, and Kael finished him. 3 down. 3 to go. The remaining attackers reassessed, spread out, flanking positions. Kael put himself between them and Lyra. "Who sent you?" No answer. They moved as one, 2 going high, 1 going low. Kael blocked high, kicked low, but the angle was wrong. A blade got through his guard and opened a line across his ribs. Not deep, but it bled. Lyra screamed. The sound broke something in Kael, something he'd kept locked down his entire life. The part of him that was pure alpha, pure predator, pure violence. He stopped thinking, just moved. The next 30 seconds were a blur of blood and steel. When it cleared, all 6 attackers were down, dead or dying. Kael stood in the center of the carnage, chest heaving, sword dripping red. Lyra was pressed against the wall, staring at him with wide eyes. "Kael?" He looked down at his hands, at the blood, at what he'd done. "We need to go," he said quietly. "Now." She didn't argue. They ran. The vault was exactly as forgotten as Kael remembered. A maze of stone corridors beneath the palace, lined with shelves of old records and forgotten supplies. He locked the entrance behind them, checked the secondary exits, and finally allowed himself to stop. His side was bleeding, not badly, but enough. Lyra was already tearing strips from her tunic. "Sit down." "I'm fine." "Sit down." He sat. She pressed the cloth against his ribs with more force than necessary. He hissed. "Sorry," she muttered, not sounding sorry at all. "It's just a scratch. It's 4 inches long and bleeding everywhere." Her hands were shaking. Who were they? Assassins, professionals. Hired by who? Malrek, Dravius, could be anyone at this point. He winced as she tied off the makeshift bandage. "You were right. You're a threat now. And threats get eliminated." Lyra sat back on her heels. "What do we do?" "We stay here tonight. Tomorrow I'll send word to Captain Thorne. Get you out of the city, somewhere Malrek can't reach you." "And you?" "I deal with the council. Permanently this time. They'll kill you. They'll try." She grabbed his arm. "That's not a plan. That's suicide. It's the only option we have left." He met her eyes. "Lyra, this has gone too far. If I don't act now, Malrek will move against me. Probably already planning it. And when he does, then we both fight. No, you run. That's an order. I don't take orders from you, and yes, you do. I'm the king. I don't care if you're the king or a beggar. I'm not leaving you." Her voice cracked. "You protected me when no one else would. You think I'm going to run the moment things get hard? This isn't about loyalty. No, it's about survival. And we have a better chance if we stick together." Kael wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she was wrong. But looking at her now, jaw set, eyes fierce, hands still stained with his blood, he realized something. She meant it. She wasn't going to run, wasn't going to hide. She was going to stand beside him, no matter how bad it got. And that terrified him more than any assassin. "Stubborn," he muttered. "Look who's talking." They stayed in the vault that night. No blankets, no fire, just cold stone and the sound of their breathing in the dark. Kael sat with his back against the wall, watching the door. Lyra eventually dozed off beside him, head dropping onto his shoulder. He didn't move, didn't want to wake her. Hours passed. His side ached. The wound wasn't serious, but it was a reminder. He wasn't invincible, wasn't untouchable, and neither was she. He needed a plan, a real one. Not just survival, victory. The pieces were already moving. Malrek had the council, Dravius had the law, And Kyle had, what? A wounded Omega and a crumbling sense of control. Not enough. But maybe it didn't need to be. An idea started to form. Dangerous, possibly insane, but it might work. Lyra stirred against his shoulder. You're thinking too loud. Didn't know you could hear thoughts. I can hear you breathing differently. What's the plan? He told her. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Probably. You'll get yourself killed. Maybe. And me.
Definitely. She sat up, looking at him in the dim light filtering through the vault entrance. When do we start?
2 days later, the opportunity came. Word spread through the palace like fire. King Kyle would be hosting a victory feast, celebrating the recent border campaign. All nobility invited, all council members required to attend. It was tradition, expected, normal, which made it perfect. Malrek accepted the invitation without question. So did Dravius. So did every lord and lady who'd voted against Kyle. They came dressed in finery, carrying smiles and hidden daggers, ready to play the game. They didn't know the game had changed. Kyle stood at the head of the feast hall, watching them filter in. Musicians played, servants poured wine. Everything looked exactly as it should. Lyra was nowhere to be seen, hidden, waiting. Malrek approached with a wine glass and false warmth. Cousin, what a lovely gesture. After our recent disagreements, I'm glad to see you're choosing reconciliation. Something like that. Where's the Omega? Surely you're not keeping her locked away on such a festive night. Lyra is exactly where she needs to be. Malrek's smile sharpened. Of course. Well, enjoy the evening. I know I will. He drifted away, joining a cluster of lords near the high table. Kale waited. Dinner was served, courses came and went, conversation flowed, everything normal, expected. Then the doors at the far end of the hall burst open. Lyra walked in, but not alone. Behind her came 20 people, men and women, all wearing the same iron cuffs Lyra had worn, all bearing the marks of trafficking, and all carrying documents, bills of sale, transfer papers, registry records. The hall went silent. Lyra walked straight to the center of the room and stopped. You wanted proof the system is broken? Here it is. She gestured to the people behind her. These are the faces you pretend not to see, the ones bought and sold in your markets, trafficked through your ports, used in your estates. Every single one has documentation, legal, binding, sanctioned by this council. Malrek stood slowly. What is this? This, Lyra said, is the truth you've been avoiding. These people, they're not property, they're human beings, and they're here to testify. Testify to what? Dravius called out from his seat. Their own sales were legal. Legal doesn't mean right, Lyra shot back. And they're not here to argue law, they're here to tell their stories. Every single one, in front of everyone. She looked at Kyle. Unless you'd like to silence them, prove you're exactly what they say you are? The trap closed. If the council silenced them, they admitted the stories were true. If they allowed testimony, the stories would destroy reputations. Either way, they lost. Malrek's face had gone pale. Your Majesty, this is highly irregular. Let them speak. Kyle's voice carried across the hall. I want to hear every word. And they spoke. One by one, they stood and told their stories. A woman who'd been sold to pay her father's debt. A man bought to work in mines that collapsed on purpose to collect insurance. A girl no older than 14 who'd spent 3 years in a brothel. Their voices shook. Some cried. But they all spoke. By the 10th testimony, lords and ladies were leaving. By the 20th, the hall was half empty. But the ones who stayed couldn't look away. Lyra stood through all of it, face hard. And when the last person finished, she turned to the remaining council members. Still think the system works? She asked quietly. No one answered. Malrek recovered first. Always the politician. This is very moving, truly, but it changes nothing. The law is the law. Then change the law, Lyra said. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. You're the council. You make the laws. So make better ones. You're naive if you think, I'm not naive. I'm angry. and so are they. She gestured to the witnesses. You can ignore us, send us away, pretend this didn't happen. But it did, and people saw. So the question isn't whether the system will change, it's whether you'll lead that change or get swept aside by it. The silence was deafening. Then Lord Garrett stood. She's right. Everyone turned. The system is broken, Garrett continued. We've known it for years. We just didn't have the courage to say it, to fix it. He looked at Kael. But maybe it's time we did. Malrek's expression twisted. You can't be serious. I am, and I move that we draft new legislation, immediately, ending the Omega trade, granting personhood protections, making trafficking a capital offense. He paused. Who seconds? Lady Corinth surprisingly raised her hand. I do. The vote happened fast, confused, chaotic, but when the hands went up, the motion passed. 7-5. Malrek stood frozen, watching his carefully constructed power base crumble. Kael felt something close to satisfaction, but it didn't last, because as the hall erupted in arguments and accusations, Kael saw Dravius stand, saw him signal to someone in the shadows, saw the glint of steel, and realized too late that this had been a distraction. The real attack was just beginning. Assassins poured in from every exit, dozens of them, moving like a coordinated strike force, not random killers this time. An army. Kael's sword was out instantly. Guards! But the guards were already fighting, overwhelmed. Chaos erupted. Lords and ladies screamed, running for exits that were blocked. Assassins cut through the crowd like scythes through wheat. Blood sprayed across marble floors. Kael fought his way toward Lyra, cutting down anyone in his path. She'd grabbed a knife from somewhere and was backing toward the wall with the witnesses clustered behind her. We need to move, he shouted over the noise. Where? Good question. Every exit was blocked, every route compromised. They were trapped. Then he saw it, the servants' corridor behind the high table, narrow, unguarded. There, go! Lyra ran. Kael covered her, blades singing. They made it to the corridor, the witnesses stumbling after them. Kael slammed the door shut and barred it. This leads to the kitchens, he said, breathing hard. From there we can reach the courtyard. And then what? Lyra demanded. Run? Hide? They'll just hunt us down. You have a better idea? She looked at him, at the witnesses, at the locked door already shuddering under assault. Yes, she said, I do. And told him the most insane thing he'd ever heard. Kael stared at her. You can't be serious. Why not? You said Malrek won't stop, that Dravius will escalate, so we escalate first. Her eyes were wild but clear. We go to the Thornwild, the forest north of the city, where criminals were exiled, where nothing human survived longer than a day, where legends went to die. It's suicide, Kael said flatly. So is staying here. The forest will kill you. Maybe. But at least I'll choose how I die. She grabbed his arm. You said yourself Malrek has the castle, has the city, but he doesn't have the forest. No one does. If we can make it through, we come out on the other side. Free. There is no other side. People don't survive the Thornwild. Then we'll be the first. The door burst inward. Assassins poured through. Kael made a choice. Run. They ran through the kitchens, out into the courtyard, past screaming guards and fighting shadows. The palace was burning now, actual flames licking up the western tower. Dravius hadn't just come to kill. He'd come to destroy. Kael grabbed a horse from the stables. Lyra climbed up behind him, arms locked around his waist. The North Gate! She shouted. He spurred the horse forward. They galloped through streets filled with smoke and panic. People scattered. Behind them, mounted assassins gave chase. Arrows whistled past Kael's head. One grazed his shoulder. He barely felt it. The North Gate loomed ahead, massive iron, already closing for the night. We're not going to make it, Lyra yelled. Yes, we are. The horse jumped, sailed over a cart, landed hard on the other side. The gate was 3/4 closed. Kael kicked harder. The horse responded, muscles straining. They shot through the gap with inches to spare. And suddenly they were outside the city, on the road, Free. Except they weren't free at all, because ahead, blocking the path, stood Malrek, with 50 armed men. Kale pulled the horse to a stop. "Going somewhere, cousin?" Malrek called out. Kale's hand went to his sword. 1 man against 50, suicide odds. But then Lyra slipped off the horse, walked forward on foot, stopped between Kale and Malrek. "Let us go," she said. Malrek laughed. "Or what? You'll lecture me to death?" "No." Lyra's voice was steady. "I'll tell everyone what you did." "What I did? I'm restoring order. You hired assassins, burned the palace, tried to kill your own king." She raised her voice so everyone could hear. "You're not restoring order, you're staging a coup, and these men know it." Malrek's expression darkened. "Seize her." The soldiers didn't move. "I said seize her!" Still nothing. Because Lyra was right. They knew. And knowing changed everything. 1 soldier lowered his weapon, then another, then 5 more. Malrek watched his army fall apart and his face twisted into something ugly. "Fine," he spat. "Run to the Thornwild. See how long you last. The forest will do what I couldn't. It'll tear you apart. And when your bodies wash up in the river, I'll mount your heads on pikes as a reminder of what happens to traitors." He turned his horse and rode back toward the city, taking the soldiers who still obeyed with him. Kyle and Lyra were alone on the road. Ahead, the Thornwild loomed like a black wall against the stars. "Last chance to turn back," Kale said. Lyra climbed back on the horse. Not a chance. They rode into the forest, and the darkness swallowed them whole. The Thornwild didn't kill them in the first hour. That was something. Kale had expected immediate attack, wolves, bears, something with teeth. Instead, the forest was eerily quiet. Just the sound of hooves on dead leaves and Lyra's breathing against his back. The trees were massive here, older than the kingdom itself, their branches forming a canopy so thick that moonlight barely penetrated. Everything smelled like rot and moss and something sharper. Something wrong. The horse stumbled, 3rd time in as many minutes. "We need to stop," Lyra said. "He's exhausted." Kyle wanted to argue, keep moving, put distance between them, and whatever came next. But she was right. The horse was trembling, foam flecking its mouth. Push it further and they'd be on foot. He found a clearing, if you could call it that. Just a gap in the trees where something had died and nothing had grown back. He dismounted, helped Lyra down, and immediately regretted stopping, because the forest noticed. The silence shifted, became watchful. Kale's instincts screamed at him to move, to fight, to do something. But there was nothing to fight, just trees and darkness and the feeling of being watched by 1,000 invisible eyes. "We should make a fire," Lyra whispered. "No, light attracts attention. So does freezing to death." She had a point. The temperature had dropped 20 degrees since entering the forest. Their breath came out in clouds. Kale's wound, the one from the assassin's blade, had started bleeding again. He could feel it soaking through the bandage. "Small fire," he conceded, "and we take turns keeping watch." Lyra gathered wood while Kyle tended the horse. His hands shook, not from cold, from blood loss, from exhaustion, from the sheer weight of what they'd just done. They'd fled the capital, abandoned the kingdom, run into a forest that had killed better prepared people than them. This was insane. "Stop thinking so loud," Lyra said, dumping an armful of branches near a circle of stones she'd arranged. "I can hear you spiraling from here." "I'm not spiraling." "You are. You do this thing where your breathing changes and your jaw gets tight, and you look like you're trying to solve a problem that doesn't have a solution." She knelt, trying to spark the kindling with flint and steel. Her hands were clumsy with cold. "We made the right choice." "Did we?" "Yes." The spark caught. Smoke curled up. "If we'd stayed, Malrek would have killed us. At least here we have a chance." "What chance? We have no supplies, no map, no idea how big this forest is or what's in it." Kale sat heavily, pressing a hand to his bleeding side. "We're going to die out here, Lyra." She looked up, firelight catching in her amber eyes. "Then we die free. That's more than most people get." The conviction in her voice should have been comforting. Instead, it just made him angry. "You don't understand," he said. "I had a kingdom, a purpose. I was holding the line, keeping order, and I threw it all away for—" He stopped himself. "For what?" she asked quietly. "For me? I didn't say that. You didn't have to." She sat back on her heels. "You think I wanted this? To be the reason you lost everything? That's not what I told you to send me away. Told you it wasn't worth it, but you wouldn't listen." Her voice cracked. "And now we're both going to die in this nightmare forest, and it's my fault." "It's not." "Yes, it is." She stood abruptly. "I should have run the first night, should have disappeared, but I stayed because I was selfish, because for the first time in my life, someone actually gave a damn whether I lived or died, and I wanted to hold on to that, even if it destroyed you." Kael stood too, ignoring the pain in his side. "You think this is about you? That I protected you because of some, what? Misplaced chivalry? Isn't it?" "No." The word came out harder than intended. "I protected you because you asked, because you stood in the rain bleeding and broken and still had the courage to ask for help, because when you looked at me, you didn't see a monster. You saw a person." He took a breath. "And maybe I needed to see that too." Lyra stared at him. "Kyle," a sound cut her off, low, guttural. Not quite animal, not quite human. They both froze. It came again, closer this time, circling. Kyle drew his sword. "Get behind me." "What is it?" "I don't know, but it's hunting." The firelight flickered, and in the darkness beyond something moved. It emerged slowly, testing the light. A creature the size of a large wolf, but wrong. Its limbs were too long, joints bending at angles that shouldn't exist. Its eyes reflected red in the firelight, and when it opened its mouth, Kale counted too many teeth. "Don't run," he murmured. The creature lunged. Kale met it with steel. His blade caught it mid-leap, opening its shoulder. It screamed, a sound like metal scraping stone, and twisted away. Blood sprayed, black blood. The creature circled, limping now but not retreating. Then two more emerged from the trees. "Kyle," Lyra breathed. "I know." 3 against 1, bad odds, worse if there were more waiting. The creatures attacked together this time. Coordinated, intelligent, Kyle killed the first one, wounded the second. But the third got through his guard and sank teeth into his leg. He felt bone crack, felt heat and pain shoot up his thigh. He brought the pommel of his sword down on its skull. Once, twice. It let go. He stumbled back, nearly fell. Lyra was suddenly there, supporting him. "We need to go." "Can't. Leg's broken." "Then I'll carry you." "You can't carry me and fight at the same time." The remaining creature circled, smart enough to wait for weakness. Kyle's vision swam. Blood loss, shock. The forest tilted sideways. "Lyra," he managed. "Run." "No." "That's an order." "I don't take orders from you. Remember?" She picked up a burning branch from the fire and swung it at the creature. It backed off, hissing. She swung again, harder, and the branch connected with its face. Fur caught fire. The creature shrieked and bolted into the darkness. Silence fell. Lyra dropped the branch and turned to Kyle. "You're bleeding everywhere. Notice that. Can you walk?" "Not really." She knelt, examining his leg in the firelight. "It's definitely broken. And those bite wounds, we need to clean them before infection sets in." "With what?" "We have nothing. We have fire. And I saw a stream about 50 yards back." She stood. "Stay here. Don't die." "Lyra!" But she was already gone, disappearing into the trees like a shadow. Kale sat there, back against a tree, trying to keep pressure on his leg and not pass out. The pain was remarkable, clarifying. It meant he was alive, for now. She came back 10 minutes later with water in a makeshift container, bark folded and sealed with sap. Clever. She also had a handful of moss and what looked like roots. "Where did you learn that?" he asked. "Survival instinct." She started cleaning the wounds. He hissed. "Sorry. Has to be done." How do you know what plants to use? I don't. I'm guessing. She looked up. But I figure anything that grows this close to the stream probably isn't poisonous. Probably. That's reassuring. You want reassuring, you picked the wrong person to run into a death forest with. Despite everything, he laughed. It hurt. She worked in silence for a while, cleaning the wounds, packing them with moss, binding them with strips torn from her tunic. Her hands were gentle but efficient, like she'd done this before. Where did you learn field medicine? He asked. You learn a lot when you're property, how to patch yourself up, how to keep going even when you're hurt, how to make do with nothing. She tied off the last bandage. The leg's bad. You won't be able to walk on it for days, maybe longer. Then we're trapped here. Not trapped, just delayed. Lyra, those creatures will come back, I know. She fed more wood to the fire, but not tonight. I think we scared them off, for now. Kael wanted to argue, point out all the ways this was hopeless, but exhaustion was pulling at him like a tide. His eyes kept trying to close. Sleep, Lyra said. I'll keep watch. You need rest too. I'll wake you in a few hours. We'll trade off. She settled near the fire, blade across her lap. Sleep, Kael. That's an order. He was too tired to fight. His eyes closed, and he dreamed of burning palaces and amber eyes and a choice that couldn't be undone. He woke to daylight filtering through the canopy and the smell of cooking meat. Kael sat up too fast. Pain exploded through his leg. He bit back a curse. Lyra looked over from where she crouched by the fire. Easy. You're still broken. What time is it? Mid-morning, I think. Hard to tell in here. She turned a stick over the flames. Something was skewered on it. Hungry? What is that? Rabbit, I think. Found it in a snare. She pulled the stick from the fire and offered it to him. Eat. You lost a lot of blood. Kael took the stick. The meat was charred on the outside, probably raw in the middle, but it was food. He ate without tasting it. Where did you get a snare? Made it. Wire from the horse's bridle, stick from the forest. She shrugged. Told you. Survival. He studied her in the daylight. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, hands trembling slightly from cold or fatigue or both, but her expression was determined, focused. You didn't sleep at all, did you? Someone had to keep watch. Lyra? Don't. I'm fine. She stood, testing her own injuries. The shoulder wound from the palace had reopened. Blood stained her makeshift bandage. We need to move. Staying in one place too long makes us targets. I can't walk. Then we'll make a crutch. She started gathering wood. Or a litter. Something. Even with a crutch, I'll slow us down. Those creatures aren't the only thing in this forest. She looked at him. While you were sleeping, I scouted. Found tracks. Human tracks. Recent. Kael went still. How recent? Day old, maybe less. She showed him a mark in the dirt near the clearing's edge. Boot print. Adult male. Someone else is out here, and they're moving with purpose. Hunters, or worse, Malrex men. Maybe. Or maybe... She paused. What if we're not the first people to run into the Thornwild? What if others made it through? No one makes it through. That's what they say about a lot of things. Doesn't make it true. She helped him stand. The pain was immediate and vicious. Can you put weight on it? Barely. Good enough. She ducked under his arm, supporting half his weight. We follow the tracks, see where they lead. This is a bad idea. You have a better one? He didn't. They moved slowly, agonizingly. Every step sent fire through Kael's leg. Lyra bore his weight without complaint, but he could feel her struggling. They were both running on fumes. The tracks led deeper into the forest, away from anything resembling civilization, towards something that felt older, wilder. After 2 hours, they had to stop. Kael's leg had gone from painful to unbearable. He leaned against a tree, breathing hard, trying not to vomit from the pain. We're not going to make it, he said. Yes, we will. Lyra, I can't. Then I'll drag you. She knelt, examining the leg. The bandages were soaked through with blood. We need proper medicine, actual supplies. If we don't find help soon, a voice cut her off. You won't have to look far. They both spun. A man stood 20 feet away, bow raised but not drawn. Middle-aged, weathered face, eyes that had seen things. He wore clothes that had been fine once but were patched and mended now. Behind him, 3 more people emerged from the trees, all armed, all watching. Kael's hand went to his sword. I wouldn't, the man said. You can barely stand, and we outnumber you, but we're not here to fight. He lowered the bow. Name's Corwin. You're trespassing in our territory. Question is, are you running from something or toward it? Both us, Lyra said before Kael could stop her. We're running from Blackthorn Vale, from the council, from men who want us dead. Corwin's expression shifted. Recognition. You're the king and the Omega who burned half the palace down. We didn't burn anything, Kael said. No? Well, word from the Vale says otherwise. Says you went mad, kidnapped royal property, started a fire during the feast that killed a dozen nobles. Corwin smiled without humor. Of course, I don't believe everything I hear, especially from Malrek Vortigern. You know Malrek? Knew his father. Man exiled me 3 years ago for speaking against the Omega trade. Figured I'd die out here like everyone else the Vale throws away. He gestured to the people behind him. Instead, I found others. Built something. You're standing at the edge of it now. Standing is generous, Lyra muttered, still supporting Kael's weight. Corwin seemed to notice Kael's condition for the first time. That leg needs attention. Iris. He nodded to one of the women behind him. Can you help? The woman stepped forward. Older, gray hair, hands that moved with confidence. A healer. She examined Kael's leg with quick efficiency. Broken. Infected. Needs to be reset and properly cleaned or you'll lose it. She looked at Corwin. We take them to Haven? Corwin studied them for a long moment. You armed? Just a sword, Kael said. Keep it. But if you draw it without cause, we'll assume hostile intent. Understood? Kael nodded. Then come. Haven's half a day's walk. We'll get you sorted. They fashioned a litter from branches and canvas. 2 of Corwin's people carried Kael while Lyra walked beside him, one hand on her blade. Trust went both ways, apparently. The journey was surreal. The deeper they went into the Thornwild, the more signs of human habitation appeared. Marked trees, cleared paths, even what looked like a watch post built into a massive oak. How many people live out here? Lyra asked. 43 at last count, Corwin said. All exiles. All people the kingdom decided weren't worth keeping. Funny thing about being thrown away, it teaches you what really matters and what doesn't. You built a settlement in the Thornwild. We built a community. There's a difference. He pointed ahead. See for yourself. They crested a rise and Kael saw it. Haven. It wasn't a village. Not really. More like a collection of structures built into and around the trees themselves. Homes carved into massive trunks. Platforms suspended between branches. Workshops, storage buildings, even what looked like a communal hall. Smoke rose from cook fires. People moved between structures with purpose. Children played in a clearing. Someone was singing. It looked impossible. It looked like hope. Welcome to Haven, Corwin said. The place that isn't supposed to exist. They brought Kael to Iris's workshop, a structure built into the base of a tree so large it could have housed 20 people. Inside it smelled like herbs and smoke and something medicinal. Iris worked on his leg without ceremony, reset the bone, cleaned the infection, applied poultices that burned worse than the original wound. Through it all, Kael gritted his teeth and didn't make a sound. Lyra watched from a corner, arms crossed, expression unreadable. When Iris finished, she wrapped the leg in clean bandages and stepped back. You'll live, but you're not walking for 2 weeks. Minimum. I don't have 2 weeks. Then you'll crawl. Your choice. She turned to Lyra. You're exhausted. When's the last time you slept? I don't remember. That's what I thought. Come, I'll find you a bed. Lyra looked at Kael. Will you be okay? I'll be fine. Go. She hesitated, then followed Iris out. Kael sat in the quiet, trying to process everything. He'd lost his kingdom, lost his throne, lost everything he'd spent his life building. And for what? To end up in a refugee camp in the middle of a death forest? This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Corwin appeared in the doorway. You look like someone who just realized he made a terrible mistake. Did I? That depends. You regret protecting her? Kael thought about it. Really thought. No. Then it wasn't a mistake, just a choice with consequences. Corwin sat on a stool. Want to know something? I was like you once. Thought my duty was everything. Thought if I just followed the rules, did what was right, the system would work. Then I spoke against the trade, and the system threw me away. Turns out duty is a convenient excuse for the powerful to demand obedience from the weak. So what do you believe in now? People. Not systems, not kingdoms, just people trying to survive. Corwin looked toward the door where the sounds of Haven filtered in. We built this because we had to, because no one else would. And you know what? It works. Not perfectly, but better than what we left behind. Kael wanted to argue, point out all the flaws in that logic, but he couldn't, because looking at Haven, at people who'd been cast aside finding ways to thrive, he saw something the kingdom had never had. Freedom, real freedom, not the kind granted by law or king, the kind earned through survival. What if I could change the kingdom? Kael asked. Make it better. Make it like this. Could you? I don't know, maybe. He looked at Corwin. But I'd need time, resources, and people willing to fight for something better. Then stay, heal, build strength. Corwin stood. And when you're ready, if you're ready, we'll talk about what comes next. The days blurred together. Kael's leg healed slowly, painfully. Lyra recovered faster. The wounds on her shoulder closed clean. The bruises faded. And day by day, color returned to her face. She spent her time learning from the people of Haven, how to hunt properly, how to build structures that wouldn't collapse, how to read the forest, how to survive without depending on anyone. She was good at it, natural. Kael watched her transform from a frightened runaway into something harder, stronger, more sure of herself, and found himself wondering who she might have been if the world had been kinder from the start. On the 10th day, she found him sitting outside Iris's workshop, testing weight on his injured leg. You're pushing too hard, she said. I'm fine. You're limping. It's getting better. She sat beside him on the wooden bench. Iris says you can walk, slowly, but you keep trying to run. Because I don't have time to walk slowly. Time for what? The kingdom's gone, Kael. Malrek has it, and even if we went back tomorrow, what would we do? Challenge him to single combat? Storm the palace with 40 forest refugees? I don't know yet, but I can't just sit here while he destroys everything. Why not? She looked at him. What if the thing you built wasn't worth saving? The words hit like a slap. You don't mean that, he said. Don't I? Think about it. You spent your whole life holding together a kingdom built on exploitation, on fear, on treating people like property. Maybe it's better off burning. You're talking about thousands of innocent lives. I'm talking about a rotten system finally collapsing under its own weight. She stood. Look around you, Kael. These people are happier than anyone in Blackthorn Vale ever was. They have less. They work harder. They live in constant danger, but they're free, really free. Maybe that's worth more than any kingdom. She walked away before he could respond. He sat there, testing his leg, trying to untangle the knot in his chest. Was she right? Had he spent his life protecting something that deserved to die? The thought was poison, but it wouldn't leave. On the 15th day, Corwin found him practicing sword forms in the training area, a cleared space where Haven's people sparred and taught each other combat. His leg still ached, but it held. You move well for someone who was half dead 2 weeks ago, Corwin observed. I've had worse. I believe it. Corwin leaned against a tree. Question. Why do you want to go back? Because Malrek will destroy the kingdom. No, I mean really. Why do you care? Kael lowered his sword. Because it's my responsibility. Is it? Or is it just what you were told? That you have to be king?
Have to hold the line, have to sacrifice everything for duty. Corwin tilted his head. What if you didn't? What if you just let it go? And do what? Live. Build something here. Help us expand Haven. Turn it into something real.
Something that could actually challenge the Veil's power. Not through conquest, through example. Kale shook his head. That would take years. Decades, maybe. So? You got somewhere else to be? The question hung in the air. Kale wanted to argue, to list all the reasons he needed to reclaim his throne, but standing there in the training yard, surrounded by people who'd built something from nothing, he couldn't find the words, because part of him wondered if Corwin was right. That night, he found Lyra sitting by the central fire, talking with some of Haven's younger residents. She was showing them something, how to tie knots, it looked like. Survival skills. She looked up as he approached. Your leg holding up? Well enough. He sat beside her. Can we talk? She excused herself from the group and followed him to the edge of the firelight. What is it? She asked. Corwin thinks we should stay. Build Haven into something bigger. Create an alternative to the Veil. And I'm considering it. She studied his face. You're serious? I don't know. Maybe. He looked back at the fire, at the people gathered around it. Everything I knew how to do, being king, holding the line, it's gone. But this? Building something new? I might actually be useful at that. So you're giving up. I'm adapting. No. Her voice hardened. You're running away, just like you accused me of doing. That's not, yes it is. You're scared of going back. Scared of facing Malrek. Scared of failing. So you're hiding here and calling it wisdom. She stepped closer. I get it. This place is safe. Comfortable. But it's not who you are, Kale. You're not someone who builds in the shadows. You're someone who stands in the light and forces people to look. And if I fail, then you fail. But at least you tried. Her amber eyes caught the firelight. You know what the real problem is? People think the only way to hold power is through force, fear, control. But that's not true. Real power, the kind that lasts, comes from trust, from proving you'll protect people even when it costs you. I already did that, and it got me exiled. No, you proved you'd protect one person. Now prove you'll protect everyone. She gestured toward Haven. These people trust Corwin because he built something real, something that works. What if you did the same in the Veil? What if you went back not as a king demanding obedience, but as a leader offering something better? Kyle stared at her. You're talking about revolution. I'm talking about change. Real change. Not just new laws, a new system. Her voice dropped. You want to beat Malrek? Don't fight him on his terms. Change the game entirely. It was insane. It was brilliant. It might actually work. I'd need people, Kael said slowly. Warriors, builders, people willing to risk everything. You have them, right here. She gestured to Haven. These are the people Malrek threw away, the ones who survived anyway. You think they wouldn't fight for a chance to build something better in their own homeland? And you? Would you fight? She met his eyes. I already am. The next morning, Kael called a gathering. Every resident of Haven came. 43 people in total. All ages. All backgrounds. All with one thing in common. They'd been cast aside and refused to die. Kael stood before them, still leaning slightly on his injured leg, and told them the truth. I was king of Blackthorn Vale. I lost that throne because I chose to protect someone the system said didn't matter. And I'd make that choice again. He paused, letting that sink in. But I'm not here to ask you to restore me. I'm here to ask you to help me build something better. A kingdom where people like you aren't thrown away. Where strength means protecting the weak, not exploiting them. Where law serves justice, not power. Silence. Then Corwin spoke. And how exactly do you plan to do that? I go back. I challenge Malrek. Not for the throne. For the right to exist. Kael looked around. I show the kingdom that we survived the Thornwild. That we built something here. And I offer them a choice. Stay under Malrek's rule or join us in building something new. You'll be killed the moment you set foot in the city, a woman called out. Maybe, but maybe not, because I won't be alone. Kael straightened. I'm asking you to come with me. Not as soldiers, as witnesses, as proof that there's another way, and if Malrek tries to silence us, he let that hang. We fight, not because we want to, but because we have to. The silence stretched, then Iris stood. I'm in. Corwin stood. As am I. One by one they rose, not all of them. Some were too old, too young, too damaged by what they'd survived. But 30 people stood. 30 people willing to risk everything. Lyra stood last. When do we leave? Kael looked at them, this ragtag group of exiles and survivors, and felt something he hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. 3 days, he said. We prepare, we plan, and then we remind Blackthorn Vale what real strength looks like. Over the next 3 days, Haven transformed into something between a war camp and a workshop. Those who could fight trained. Those who couldn't prepared supplies, sewed banners, crafted the symbols they'd need. Lyra designed the banner herself. Not the royal crest of Blackthorn Vale, but something new. A tree with roots breaking through stone. Growth through struggle. On the final night before departure, Kael found Lyra sitting alone at the edge of Haven, looking toward where the forest thinned and the vale lay beyond. Second thoughts? He asked. Always. She glanced at him. But I'm still going. He sat beside her. You know this might not work. We might all die. I know. And you're okay with that? She was quiet for a moment. When I was running from Dravius, I didn't think about dying. I just thought about living one more day, getting one step further. And then I crashed into your courtyard, and you didn't send me back. You gave me a reason to want more than just survival. She looked at him. So yes, I'm okay with the risk. Because even if we fail, at least we tried to build something worth believing in. Kael felt something shift in his chest. Not a bond. Not obligation. Just recognition. She wasn't following him out of loyalty or fear. She was walking beside him as an equal. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For not letting me hide. She smiled. Someone had to keep you honest. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars appear through the canopy. Tomorrow, they'd march back to the kingdom that had exiled them. Tomorrow, they'd challenge everything the Vale had built itself upon. Tomorrow, they'd either change the world or die trying. But tonight, sitting beside someone who saw him not as a king or a monster, but just as a person, Kael felt something he'd never allowed himself before. Peace. They left Haven at dawn, 32 people in total, not an army, not even a proper militia, just a collection of exiles carrying homemade weapons and a banner that meant something only to them. Kael led from the front, his legs still aching, but holding. Lyra walked beside him, and behind them came Corwin, Iris, and the others who'd chosen to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could change something. The journey back through the Thornwild took 2 days. The creatures that had hunted them before kept their distance now. Maybe they sensed the numbers. Maybe they just didn't care. Either way, the forest let them pass. When they emerged on the road south of Blackthorn Vale, the city sprawled before them like a wounded beast. Smoke still rose from the western district. Parts of the wall showed scorch marks. Malrek hadn't just seized power. He'd burned away anyone who might contest it. Looks worse than when we left, Lyra said quietly. Kael studied the city, guards on the walls, doubled patrols at the gates. He's expecting trouble. From us? From anyone who survived. Corwin moved up beside them. Question is, how do we get in without getting killed? We don't sneak, Kael said. We walk through the front gate. Everyone stared at him. That's suicide, Iris said flatly. Maybe. Or maybe it's the only move Malrek won't expect. Kael turned to face the group. He thinks we're dead, thinks the Thornwild killed us. If we show up alive, all of us together, it shatters his story, forces him to react instead of act. React by killing us, Gus, someone muttered. He can't, not publicly. Not in front of the whole city. Kael looked at Lyra. You said I needed to change the game. This is how. We turn his strength, control of the city, into his weakness. Make him respond to us in the open where everyone can see. Lyra's eyes narrowed, thinking it through. Then she nodded. It could work, but we need witnesses. People who'll spread what they see. The market, Corwin said. It's always packed midday. Merchants, citizens, refugees from the outer districts. If we time it right, we make an entrance no one can ignore. Kael looked at the banner one of Haven's people carried, the tree breaking through stone. And we give them something worth talking about. They waited until noon. The south gate was the busiest, merchants hauling goods, farmers bringing produce, citizens moving between districts. The guards checked cargo but didn't search individuals. Too much traffic, too little time. Kael's group joined the flow. They'd hidden their weapons under cloaks, furled the banner. Looked like just another refugee caravan seeking entry. The guard at the gate was young, bored. He waved them through without really looking. Just like that, they were inside. The city felt different, heavier. Fear hung in the air like fog. People moved quickly, heads down, avoiding eye contact. Soldiers patrolled every corner wearing Malrek's colors, black and silver, the Vortigern crest modified to remove Kael's personal seal. He's rebranding, Lyra observed, making it his kingdom, not yours. Not for long. They moved through the streets toward the central market. People gave them space. A group of 30 strangers walking with purpose drew attention. Whispers followed them. Who are they? Look at that one in front. That's not... It can't be... The king? No, he's dead. Malrek said, but what if... The whispers spread faster than they walked. By the time they reached the market square, a crowd had formed. Hundreds of people, staring, pointing, not sure what they were seeing, but unable to look away. Kael stopped in the center of the square. His people fanned out around him, and then, deliberately, they unfurled the banner. The tree breaking through stone snapped in the wind. Silence fell. Then someone shouted, "It's the king! King Kael lives!" The crowd erupted, some cheering, some backing away in fear, most just confused. Soldiers pushed through the throng, hands on weapons. "By order of Lord Malrek, you're under arrest." "On what charge?" Kael's voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Surviving? Returning to my own kingdom?" The lead soldier hesitated. "You abandoned the throne, fled with stolen property. Lord Malrek is a liar and a traitor." Kael took a step forward. The soldier stepped back. "I fled nothing. I was attacked by assassins in my own palace. The same assassins Malrek hired to kill me and seize power. That's not... Prove it's not." Kael gestured to the people around him. "These are witnesses. Citizens of Blackthorn Vale who were exiled, cast out, declared dead by a system that valued control over justice. And yet here they stand, alive. Because we survived what your lord promised would kill us." The crowd pressed closer, hungry for truth in a city that had been fed lies. "Where is Malrek?" Kael demanded. "If he's the rightful ruler, let him face me. Here, now, in front of everyone." The soldier swallowed hard. "He's in the palace. Then bring him out. I can't just... You can, and you will. Because if you don't, everyone here will know you're protecting a coward." Kael's voice dropped. "So go. Get your lord. Tell him the king has returned, and he has questions." The soldier ran. Kael turned to the crowd. "I know what you've been told, that I went mad, that I kidnapped an Omega and burned the palace, that I abandoned you." He paused. "It's all lies. The truth is simpler. I protected someone who asked for help. And Malrek, my own cousin, tried to have me killed for it. When that failed, he staged a coup, burned the palace, blamed me, and seized power while you were still burying the dead." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Uncertain, but listening. Lyra stepped forward. "My name is Lyra Hale. 6 months ago, I was sold to Lord Dravius as property. He trafficked me, abused me. When I ran, King Kyle protected me. Not because he had to, because it was right. She looked around at the faces, and for that choice, for choosing justice over law, they tried to destroy him. Ask yourselves, what kind of kingdom punishes mercy and rewards cruelty? The kind that needs to change, Corwin added, moving to stand beside her. I'm Corwin Reed. 3 years ago, I spoke against the Omega trade. Malrek's father exiled me to die in the Thornwild. But I didn't die. None of us did. He gestured to the Haven refugees. We built something out there. A community. Proof that people can survive, can thrive, without chains. The crowd was listening now, really listening. Then the soldiers came. Not a dozen. Hundreds. They poured into the square from every side street, surrounding Kael's group in a wall of steel and black fabric. And at their head, mounted on a white horse, came Malrek. He looked different, harder. He wore the crown, a simple circlet of silver that Kael had never much cared for, but had been part of the Vortigern line for generations. Seeing it on Malrek's head felt obscene. Cousin, Malrek's voice carried across the square, you've caused quite a commotion. Truth tends to do that. Malrek smiled. Truth? You call this truth? A group of exiles and criminals making wild accusations? He looked at the crowd. This man fled his responsibilities, burned the palace, killed nobles, and now he returns with lies, hoping you'll forget his crimes. If they're lies, prove it. Kyle took a step forward. The soldiers around him tensed. You claim I burned the palace, but I was fighting assassins, your assassins. You claim I killed nobles, but the only people who died were the ones trying to kill me. Another step. And you claim I abandoned the throne, but you're the one wearing a crown that doesn't belong to you. It belongs to whoever can hold it. Malrek's smile faded. And you couldn't. You were weak, sentimental. You put one Omega above the needs of the kingdom. I put a person above a corrupt system. There's a difference. There's no difference. The system is what holds the kingdom together. Without it, we're just chaos and mob rule. Malrek gestured to the crowd. These people don't want change. They want order, stability. Someone strong enough to make the hard choices. Someone cruel enough, you mean? Lyra's voice cut through. You talk about strength like it means brutality, like controlling people is the same as protecting them. But real strength, she looked at Kael, is knowing you could destroy someone and choosing not to. That's what he did for me. That's what he's offering you now. Malrek's expression twisted. Enough. I don't have time for speeches. He gestured to his soldiers. Arrest them. All of them. Any who resist, kill. The soldiers moved in. Kael's hand went to his sword, but before anyone could draw, a voice rang out from the crowd. No. Everyone turned. Lord Garrett pushed through the throng, still wearing his military uniform, but walking unarmed. Behind him came Lady Corinth, and behind her 3 more council members. 5 in total, half of what remained. Garrett stopped between Kael's group and Malrek's soldiers. This has gone far enough. Malrek stared at him. What are you doing? What I should have done weeks ago, choosing a side. Garrett looked at Kael. You were right. The system is broken. And Malrek, he turned to face the mounted lord. You're not fixing it. You're making it worse. You're committing treason. No. I'm upholding my oath to protect the kingdom, not to serve whoever seizes the throne through murder and lies. Garrett looked at the soldiers. Stand down, all of you. This isn't a lawful order. The soldiers hesitated, looked at each other, looked at Malrek. I said arrest them. Malrek's voice cracked with fury. No one moved, because Garrett was right, and everyone knew it. Malrek's face went red. Fine, I'll do it myself. He dismounted, drawing his sword, and advanced on Kael. The crowd backed away, forming a circle. Arena rules. Old law. If 2 claimants to the throne fought, the winner held power. No one could interfere. Kael drew his blade. You really want to do this? He asked quietly. I've wanted to do this since we were children. Malrek circled, looking for an opening. You with your noble restraint, your perfect control. Everyone always saying how strong you were, how you'd be such a great king. He spat. But you were weak, too afraid of what you might become to actually use your power. And it made you pathetic. If I'm so pathetic, this should be easy. Malrek lunged. Kael sidestepped, letting the blade pass inches from his ribs. Malrek was fast, trained, but sloppy, fighting like he had something to prove. Kael had nothing to prove. He'd spent his whole life restraining himself, holding back, making sure he never became the monster people feared. But standing here now, watching Malrek try to kill him, try to kill Lyra, try to destroy everything he'd protected, Kael felt something shift. Restraint wasn't weakness, it was choosing when to unleash. Malrek attacked again. Kael parried, riposted, and opened a shallow cut across Malrek's shoulder. Not fatal, intentional. "You're holding back," Malrek snarled. "Fight me!" "I am fighting you. I'm just better at it." The next exchange was faster. Malrek fought with desperation. Kael fought with precision. Their blades rang against each other. Once, twice, 3 times. Then Kael twisted his wrist, caught Malrek's sword at an angle, and sent it spinning from his hand. It clattered on the cobblestones 15 feet away. Kael's blade came to rest against Malrek's throat. The square went silent. "Yield," Kael said. Malrek's chest heaved. Blood ran from the shoulder wound, but his eyes burned with hate. "Never." "Then I'll make this simple." Kael pressed the blade closer, just enough to draw a bead of blood. "You have 2 choices. You can yield, confess your crimes, face justice, or—" He paused. "I can kill you right here, rightfully, legally, under the old laws you're so fond of." "You won't. You're too weak. No." Kael's voice dropped to something cold and final. "I'm too controlled, but control is a choice, and I can choose to stop." For the first time, real fear flickered in Malrek's eyes. Because he finally understood. Kael wasn't weak. He was dangerous. More dangerous than Malrek could ever be. Because Kael's power came with discipline, with purpose, with the ability to choose mercy or destruction and make it stick. "I yield," Malrek whispered. Kael lowered his sword. "Say it louder, so everyone can hear." "I yield," Malrek's voice cracked. "I yield." The crowd erupted. Soldiers threw down their weapons. Citizens cheered. The council members who'd sided with Malrek suddenly found reasons to be elsewhere. Kael stepped back, letting Malrek collapse to his knees. Lord Garrett moved forward. "Malrek Vortigern, you're under arrest for treason, conspiracy to commit murder, and sedition. You'll be tried before the full council." He nodded to 2 soldiers. "Take him." They did, roughly. Garrett turned to Kael. "Your Majesty, the throne is yours, if you want it." Kael looked at the crown lying in the dirt where Malrek had dropped it, looked at Lyra standing with the Haven refugees, looked at the crowd, hundreds of people watching, waiting to see what he'd do. He picked up the crown. Then he walked to where Lyra stood and held it out to her. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Making a choice." He looked at the crowd. "I didn't fight to reclaim a throne. I fought to change a kingdom, and that change starts now." He raised his voice so everyone could hear. Blackthorn Vale was built on power, on control, on the idea that some people matter more than others, but it's a lie. We're all just people trying to survive, and the only thing that separates us is whether we choose to help each other or hurt each other. He gestured to the Haven refugees. These people survived the Thornwild, built a community from nothing, proved that strength isn't about domination, it's about cooperation, about protecting those who can't protect themselves. He looked at Garrett. "If I'm to be king again, it won't be of the same kingdom. It'll be of something new, something better." He turned to the crowd. "I'm proposing a new law, effective immediately. No person, Omega, Alpha, or otherwise, can be owned. Trafficking is punishable by exile to the Thornwild, and the council will be expanded to include representatives from every district, not just nobles. Everyone." Shocked silence. Then Corinth spoke up. "Your Majesty, that would fundamentally alter the power structure." "Yes, that's the point." Kael met her eyes. "The question is whether you'll help build it or get swept aside by it." Garrett stepped forward. I'll help. Corinth hesitated, then nodded. As will I. One by one, the remaining council members pledged support. Not all of them, but enough. Kael placed the crown not on his own head, but on a stone pedestal in the center of the square. This stays here. Anyone who wants to lead will have to earn it. Not through birth or force, through action, through proving they'll protect everyone. Not just the powerful. He looked at Lyra, starting with her. She stared at him. Kael, what are you? You survived slavery, survived the Thornwild, survived everything this kingdom threw at you and came back stronger. He took her hand. If anyone understands what needs to change, it's you. So I'm asking, will you help me lead? Not as property, not as a symbol, as an equal. Tears gathered in her amber eyes. You're insane. Probably. Is that a yes? She laughed, a real laugh. Yes. The crowd's roar shook the square. Over the next 3 months, Blackthorn Vale transformed. It wasn't smooth. There were protests. Noble families who'd profited from the trade tried to resist. Some fled. Others were exiled. A few even accepted the changes, but slowly, painfully, the kingdom shifted. The trafficking markets were shut down. Every Omega in custody was freed and offered protection. Many stayed. Some left. All were given the choice. The council expanded. Representatives from the outer districts, from Haven, from groups that had never had voices before, suddenly found themselves at the table where decisions were made. Laws were rewritten, not all at once, but steadily. Protection for the vulnerable, consequences for the powerful. Justice that actually resembled the word. Kael worked himself to exhaustion. 16-hour days, endless meetings, constant resistance from those who benefited from the old ways. But he didn't back down, didn't compromise on the fundamentals, and Lyra stood beside him through all of it. She became the voice for those who'd been silenced, spoke at council meetings, traveled to the outer districts, helped build programs to help former slaves reintegrate, became living proof that the system could change. People started calling her the queen who wasn't, not because she lacked authority, but because she refused to wear the title as a crown. She was just Lyra, and somehow that made her more powerful. 6 months after the confrontation in the square, Kael found her standing on the palace balcony, looking out over the city. "You're up late," he said. "So are you." She didn't turn around. "Can't sleep?" "Too much to think about." He moved to stand beside her. "We got word from the eastern provinces today. 3 more districts voted to adopt the new laws. And how many voted against? 2. But they'll come around." He paused. "We're winning, Lyra. Slowly. But winning." "Are we?" She finally looked at him. "Sometimes I wonder if we're just replacing one system with another, trading one set of chains for different ones." "You don't believe that." "No, but I worry about it." She leaned against the railing. "What happens when you're gone? When I'm gone, will whoever comes next keep fighting for this? Or will they slowly slide back to the old ways? I don't know." Kael was quiet for a moment. "But I think that's the point. We build the foundation. We prove it's possible. And then we trust others to keep building. That's what change is. Not one person fixing everything, but a lot of people choosing to do better." She smiled. "When did you get so wise?" "When I started listening to you." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city sleep. Below, Blackthorn Vale sprawled like a promise. Not perfect, not finished, but better than it had been. And every day, a little better still. "Do you regret it?" Lyra asked suddenly. "Everything you gave up, everything this cost." Kael thought about it, really thought. He'd lost the absolute power of the throne, lost the simple certainty of the old ways, lost the comfort of knowing exactly who he was supposed to be. But he'd gained something more valuable, purpose, real purpose, not duty assigned by birth, but choice made through action. "No," he said finally, "I don't regret it, any of it. Not even the part where you almost died in the Thornwild. Especially not that part. It taught me something important." "What's that?" "That survival isn't about enduring, it's about adapting, about finding the strength to become something new when the old version stops working. He looked at her. You taught me that. I taught you? Lyra laughed. Kael, I was a terrified runaway who crashed into your courtyard and ruined your life. You were a person who asked for help, and I was finally smart enough to give it. He took her hand. Everything that came after, all of this, started with that choice, with choosing to see you, really see you, not as property or a problem, as a person. She squeezed his hand. For what it's worth, I see you too. Not as a king or a monster, just you, and you're more than enough. They stood there on the balcony, hand in hand, as the first light of dawn touched the city. Below, people were waking, going to work, living lives that were their own, free in ways they hadn't been 6 months ago. It wasn't perfect. It never would be. But it was theirs, built through sacrifice and struggle and the stubborn belief that maybe, just maybe, people deserved better than what they'd been given. A year later, they held the first open election for council positions. Candidates from every district, every background, rich and poor, alpha, omega, and everything between. Kael didn't run. Neither did Lyra. They'd done their part, proven it could work. Now it was time to let others carry it forward. On election day, Kael found Lyra in the gardens behind the palace, the same courtyard where they'd first met, where she'd stumbled in bleeding and broken, and he'd made a choice that changed everything. Nervous? He asked. Terrified. She looked up from the flowers she'd been tending. What if they choose wrong? What if they undo everything we built? Then we'll rebuild. That's how this works. He sat beside her on the stone bench. But I don't think they will. You know why? Why? Because they've seen what's possible. They've lived it. And once you know things can be better, it's hard to accept worse. She leaned against him. I hope you're right. Me too. They sat in the garden as the sun climbed higher, as the city voted, as the kingdom they'd bled for took another step toward something neither of them could have imagined a year ago. And when the results came in that evening, when the new council was seated with representatives from every walk of life, including 3 former slaves, Kael and Lyra stood in the back of the chamber and watched, not as rulers, as witnesses. The king who'd been rejected 23 times had finally found what he'd been looking for all along, not a bride to stand beside him in ceremony, but a partner to build something real with, someone who saw his strength not as a threat, but as a tool that could be used to protect instead of dominate. And the girl who'd been hunted like an animal had become the force that changed a kingdom, not through power or position, but through the simple act of surviving, of refusing to disappear, of proving that even the broken could rise. Together, they'd rewritten fate. Together, they'd built a world where strength meant restraint, where power served justice, and where even those the system threw away could come back and remake it entirely. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was better. It was real. And standing in that council chamber, watching people who'd never had voices before finally being heard, Kael felt something he'd never quite believed in before. Hope. Not the naive kind that pretended everything would be easy. The hard kind. The kind that knew change was messy and slow and required constant fighting, but also knew it was possible and worth it. Lyra looked up at him. What are you thinking? That I made the right choice? That night in the rain? Which choice? All of them. He smiled. Every single one. She smiled back. Me too. Outside, Blackthorn Vale settled into evening, a kingdom transformed. Not perfect, never perfect, but free. And that, after everything, was enough.